I've set a rule for my main collection. Only one watch per brand I own, with no exceptions. Following this philosophy adds weight and significance to my watch choices. When it came to Seiko, a brand with a catalog deeper than perhaps anyone else in the entire industry, I had a tough decision to make. What model could possibly distill the essence of Seiko as a brand down into a singular watch? For me, the watch that achieves this is the SKX009. It's certainly not the best watch Seiko has ever made. It's a no-frills tool watch that lacks many features that come standard in newer models. And yet, it remained a fan favorite for years, and still to this day I believe, is the quintessential Seiko. Today, I'm going to show you why this flawed, but charming, masterpiece of a watch is the only Seiko that I'll ever need in my collection, and why modern upgrades are losing the soul of a brand. Before its recent popularity, the SKX design language was born around 60 years ago, and has remained a staple in the Seiko lineup ever since. By the 1970s, Seiko was already well known for their dive watch formula via models such as 62 Moss, Tunas, and the original Willards, the latter of which introduced a distinct canted crown position and cushion case design. As Seiko was one of the main reasons for the development and proliferation of quartz movements that caused the quartz crisis, they released a number of quartz watches around this time with cases we now associate with the SKX. The 7548 in particular is essentially the mirror image of Seiko's modern diver catalog, only differing by the quartz movement inside and a few minor details. By the late 80s, as the quartz crisis waned, Seiko had released the first mechanical version of the modern SKX, known as the 7002 Diver. And not too long after, the SK001 was released with the now famous 7x26 movement inside. From there, the SKX007 and 009 became the de facto standard affordable mechanical dive watches among collectors for many years up until its discontinuation in 2019. The SKX007 and 009 were never really praised for their technical specifications. The 7S26 movement inside is really nothing to write home about specs-wise. It's a 21 joule automatic movement with around 40 hours of power reserve, beating at a standard 3 Hz frequency. It lacks basic features such as hacking and hand winding, which necessitates the infamous Seiko shuffle upon starting up the watch. The accuracy isn't great, being around plus or minus 40 seconds a day. The finishing on these movements is non-existent, and I find it amusing that there are actually quite a few display caseback models in Seiko's lineup that had the 7S26 in them. Despite these unimpressive specs, the 7S26 is nearly universally loved by Seiko fans. Where it lacks technical prowess, it makes up for it in reliability, affordability, and accessibility. The 7S26 remains to be one of the most affordable and reliable automatic mechanical movements on the market, even 30 years later. There's no chance you'd ever find a Swiss automatic date-day movement anywhere near the price and accessibility of these. The accounts of how these movements just keep on ticking for years without servicing alone is astounding. Their simplicity enables an extremely surface-level watchmaking knowledge to regulate them too, which only increases their popularity in the hobbyist and custom watch community. The case and outer design is where this watch really shines though. The case design is unmistakably Seiko. The 4-o'clock crown and crown guards, the flow of the lugs into the case sides, and the smooth curves throughout all contribute to this distinct look. The dial is utilitarian in nature, sporting a matte navy base with large loomed indices that do manage to be quite bright when charged up. The dial is all printed and lacks any sense of 3D depth besides the angled chapter ring. Despite the lack of any luxury style intrigue, the entire design works well. You're getting a no-frills tool watch aesthetic for a great price. It doesn't need to show off to get the job done. This watch measures in at 42.5mm, which sounds relatively inaccessible at first glance. But as I mentioned in my previous video, diameter sizing means practically nothing, and this measurement is no different. Because of the case geometry and extremely short lug-to-lug length of 46mm, the 009 is surprisingly wearable for most wrists. The thickness dampens this a bit though, as nearly 13.5mm with a flush crystal wears the entirety of that bulky measurement. And speaking of the crystal, in classic controversial Seiko fashion, this uses their proprietary Hardlex in lieu of a more desirable sapphire. I personally haven't had too many issues with this, but do know that Hardlex is said to have a lower hardness than sapphire, making it more susceptible to scratches and wear. The SKX has a stated 200 meters of water resistance and 120 click unidirectional Pepsi rotating bezel, which I find I prefer to the monotone 007. Again, this is only printed on, so the scratches here will cut straight through the paint to the steel below. If you enjoy in-depth watch reviews, deep dive discussions, and learning about watch models that are a bit off the beaten path, please consider subscribing. My current goal is to reach 100 subscribers and work towards becoming partnered. I upload new videos every week discussing all of these topics in watches and watch collecting, with a discussion of a mystery watch related to the topic near the end of every video, called the Obscure Reference. Thank you. The finishing on the case is actually fairly good for the price in my opinion. The lugs have great directional brushing that stands out against the polished sides, with a sharp bevel to differentiate them. The outer knurling on the bezel is polished as well, which is a nice touch. The caseback of the watch has the Seiko Great Wave logo that I actually prefer to the display casebacks of other models I mentioned earlier. I don't have experience with the bracelet on these, but from what I've read, they aren't great. Jangly, hollow end links, and generally regarded as low quality, these aren't spoken of highly in my experience. But with all things Seiko, there are still some nostalgic individuals who have come to love these despite their flaws. The SKX's tool watch diver aesthetic goes with practically any strap option you choose with it too. I've worn mine most on a NATO, but the classic rubber strap and a plethora of aftermarket bracelets all go quite well with it. I've even seen these on leather straps from time to time, although I'm not sure if that combo works all that well. These days, the SKX is more of a collector's piece because of its discontinued status. In the modern Seiko lineup, these have been replaced with the Seiko 5 Sports series, specifically the SRPD 53. In dimensions, the newer replacement is virtually identical to the SKX, and the design aesthetic remains mostly the same, although now it has begun diverging from the tool watch feel. The new dials feature a sunburst pattern and applied indices, in addition to a display caseback, that all contribute to a dressier and more upscaled look. The new 4R36 movement features hacking and hand winding this time, although the water resistance has been lowered to just 100 meters. Objectively, the newer Seiko 5 line is an upgrade on the wearing experience and quality over the SKX. If you're a bigger fan of this look and are in the market for one of these, I would certainly recommend the newer model. To me though, I'd always want to stick with the classic SKX. Something about the design philosophy of it resonates with me more. It's not trying to be something it's not, or look more expensive than it is. The SKX is closer to its roots in that way, serving that tool vibe significantly more. Of course, if you enjoy the design cues of the case and bezel of these, Seiko has expanded the lineup to include the Seiko 5 GMTs and others as well. These are all great options, and I'd probably recommend any modern Seiko over the SKX, assuming you can get a good price. But that's the kicker though. As modern Seiko is inching more and more upmarket, their previously affordable design languages are moving up in price and becoming less justifiable. They haven't quite reached that point on their lower end models, but in the next few years, perhaps it will become advisable to look into the older Seikos if you're concerned with affordability and value proposition. If I asked you to choose what you thought was the quintessential Seiko model, what would be your pick? Would it be the SKX this video is about? Or perhaps one of the Seiko 5 S and X's? Or maybe the Seiko Alpinist? The Alpinist certainly ranks highly for me, as it does with many collectors for its cathedral hands, great color schemes, and internal crown-controlled compass. I personally have been interested in the most popular of these, the green Alpinist SPB121, for many years. In the mainstream audience, this is already a relatively uncommon choice among a sea of Seiko 5s, but I wouldn't exactly call it obscure. That's why today's obscure reference is not about the classic Alpinist, but a significantly lesser known one, the SBCJ031 Alpinist. Although its dial is significantly more busy than your standard Alpinist, I wouldn't blame you if you thought this was the same model but with a GMT complication. On closer inspection, you may notice that this has a 4 o'clock date window and that the crowns are at 4 and 2. But if you look even closer, you'll come to realize that this is actually a perpetual calendar in a titanium case as well. Now before you ask, yes, this is a quartz watch and not mechanical. It would be a pipe dream for Seiko or any other brand to release a watch with these specs at this price with a fully mechanical movement. At the very least, you won't have to worry about keeping your watch wound to maintain the correct date throughout the year. Regardless of this though, where else are you going to find a perpetual calendar GMT watch with an internal rotating bezel and titanium case? The answer is that I don't think you're going to. I really love the design on these, and I believe they could be some of the most unique designs Seiko has ever released. The SBCJ031 comes in 4 colorways, a black, cream, amazing blue, and almost unbelievably white with a fully loomed dial. I know I said this a lot, but you're never going to find a watch this interesting and downright cool for this price with any of the popular models you see on the market today. Unfortunately, these were discontinued a few years back, but they are generally still available in the secondary market and pop up from time to time. Even though the SKX009 was the first mechanical watch in my collection, and a rather cliche choice at that, I still think I made the correct choice. Since then, I've purchased and acquired other Seikos, but even now, I only consider the SKX to be part of my main collection that I actually wear regularly. And I can't imagine a situation in which that changes in the future either, because with the way Seiko as a brand has been heading over the last few years, their appeal to me is quickly diminishing. What was once the industry leader in affordability and go-to choices in mechanical watches for the average person, has now increased prices and removed the draw for many. These days, I feel that brands like Citizen, Orient, and even Casio have taken the torch in this regard, and are still releasing pieces that the average person can buy easily. To me, the SKX is the quintessential Seiko. It represents everything great and distinct about the brand from its popularity, affordability, rugged nature, and design language. Design cues such as the 4 o'clock crown, pseudo-cushion case, and shorter curved lugs all contribute to Seiko's dedication to their history, while still borrowing elements for the dial and bezel from other brands such as Rolex's Submariner and GMT Masters. It's a watch that achieves exactly what it sets out to be, a reliable option that almost anyone can afford, with a basic yet distinct and effective style. Exactly what Seiko as a brand is meant to be. How do you all feel about the previous generation of SKXs? Are you more of a fan of the older Seikos, or do you think the brand still has a lot to offer in their modern lineup? Let me know if you think there's another watch that better epitomizes the brand than this one in the comments. I'm interested to hear your opinion on this. Let me know about any brands, watches, or topics you'd like for me to cover in future videos. Thank you for taking the time to watch.